18.5 million pounds. That's what my father owed the Korean Mafia, and apparently, I was the only currency he had left to pay it. But here's what nobody expected. I wasn't about to be some invisible trophy wife. If Young thought he could just ignore me while I rotted in his mansion, he was dead wrong. Before we dive into how I made the coldest mafia boss in Seoul completely lose his mind over me, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me, would you fight back or just accept being sold like property? Now let's get into this. The rain hammered against the windows of our Johannesburg estate that night. My father didn't even have the decency to look at me when he said it. Elna, you're getting married. His voice came from behind that massive desk he loved so much, the one that made him feel important. I stood there in my evening gown, fresh from a charity function, still wearing the smile I'd practiced for years. Married? To whom? Someone who can solve our problems. Problems? What a nice way to say he'd gambled away the family fortune and gotten involved with people who made problems disappear permanently. I'd heard the whispers from staff, seen the threatening letters he thought he'd hidden so well. His name is Young. He's Korean, runs a very successful organization in Seoul. The wedding happens in 4 days. 4 days. Not 4 months, not even 4 weeks. My hands stayed perfectly still at my sides despite the rage building in my chest. 25 years of etiquette training wouldn't let them shake, no matter how badly I wanted to throw something at his head. What kind of organization? Father poured himself brandy. The expensive kind he only drank when things were really bad. Import-export, he said, like I was stupid enough not to understand what that meant. You're selling me to a criminal. I'm saving our family. He finally looked at me, and God, I almost laughed at the self-righteousness in his eyes. You think I wanted this? The debt is 18.5 million pounds, Elna. They threatened to execute me publicly, make an example of the entire Johnson family. Your mother, your sister, everyone. So you're trading me instead. I'm securing an alliance. The Young family wants legitimacy in international circles, access to our connections in South African society, European networks. You'll provide that. In exchange, the debt disappears and we survive. There it was. The truth I'd always suspected, but never wanted to admit. All those years of private schools, language lessons, etiquette classes, learning to be charming and beautiful and perfect. None of it was for me. It was to make me valuable merchandise. And if I refuse, then we all die, including you. His voice went flat. These aren't people who negotiate, Elna. They own half of Seoul's underworld, and they're expanding globally. Young himself is apparently ruthless beyond measure. But he's also wealthy beyond imagination and currently unmarried. This is the deal they offered. The only deal. I see. My voice could have frozen fire. When do I leave? Tomorrow morning. Everything's arranged. Of course it was. He'd probably been planning this for months, maybe longer. Every accomplishment I'd ever achieved suddenly made horrible sense. The university degree in international relations? Useful for a mafia wife who'd need to navigate different cultures. My fluency in 5 languages? Perfect for someone who'd be attending global criminal summits disguised as business dinners. Even my looks, the money spent on dermatologists and trainers and stylists. All of it was just packaging to increase my value. I won't fight you on this, I said quietly. If it saves the family, I'll go. Relief flooded his face. Good girl. You've always been practical. Practical. Right. What I actually was, standing there planning, calculating. If I had to marry some cold Korean gangster, fine. But I wouldn't be broken, wouldn't be invisible, and I definitely wouldn't be grateful. The flight to Seoul lasted 15 hours. Plenty of time to research Young through what little information existed online. Most of it was speculation and rumor. He rarely appeared in public, kept his face out of media, operated through layers of intermediaries. What I did find painted a picture of someone methodical, intelligent, and absolutely merciless. There were whispered stories about rivals who'd crossed him and simply vanished. Entire families erased from existence. Wonderful. I was marrying a ghost who murdered people for a living. They took me straight from the airport to some luxury hotel where women I'd never met stripped me down and dressed me like a doll. The wedding gown was stunning, I had to admit. Ivory silk that hugged every curve before flowing into a cathedral train, off-shoulder sleeves that showcased my collarbone, delicate beading that probably cost more than most people's cars. Someone had studied my measurements carefully. Creepy, but at least they had good taste. Within 3 hours of landing, I was walking down an aisle toward a man I'd never seen. The venue looked like something out of a fever dream. Traditional Korean architecture mixed with Western elements, black and gold everywhere, orchids and roses in massive arrangements. Beautiful, except for the armed guards lining every wall, and the guests who looked like they'd all killed someone before breakfast. This wasn't a wedding. It was a business merger with fancy decorations. My heels clicked against marble as I walked, bouquet clutched in hands that wanted to tremble but wouldn't dare. Every eye in that room assessed my value like I was livestock at auction. I kept my chin up and my expression serene, the perfect bride, even though I felt like I was walking toward my own execution. Then I saw him. Young stood at the altar in a black suit that probably cost 6 figures, hands clasped, expression completely blank. Younger than I expected, maybe 32, and unfairly handsome in a way that felt dangerous. Sharp cheekbones, intense dark eyes, black hair styled perfectly. He looked like he could slit your throat and then order dessert without his pulse changing. His eyes met mine as I approached. They swept over me once, head to toe, a clinical assessment that made my skin crawl. No appreciation, no interest, nothing. Just evaluation, like he was checking that the merchandise matched the description. When I reached the altar, he didn't offer his hand or smile. Didn't acknowledge me beyond a slight nod, like I was a business associate arriving for a meeting. The officiant started speaking in Korean, then English. Traditional vows that felt like chains wrapping around my wrists with every word. My voice stayed steady when I responded, clear and strong. Yong's voice was deep and controlled, completely empty of emotion, like he was reading from a script he found boring. We exchanged rings. His fingers were ice cold when they touched mine, and he pulled away the instant the ring was on, like my skin burned him. You may kiss the bride. Young turned to me, and I swear I saw irritation flash across his face, like this part of the ceremony was beneath him. Then he leaned in, pressed his lips to mine for maybe 2 seconds in the coldest kiss I'd ever experienced, and pulled away. Applause filled the room. My first kiss as a married woman had been less intimate than a handshake with a stranger. The drive to his estate was silent. I sat in the back of a black SUV next to my husband, who spent the entire trip on his phone speaking rapid Korean about shipments and territory. He didn't look at me once, didn't speak to me, acted like I literally didn't exist. Anger started replacing shock. How dare he? I might be a transaction, but basic human decency wasn't too much to expect. The estate appeared behind high walls and multiple security checkpoints. Massive, modern, cold glass and stone and armed guards everywhere. Young got out without waiting for me and strode toward the entrance like he'd forgotten I was even there. I gathered my dress and followed, my heels clicking sharply on stone. Inside was pristine and sterile. High ceilings, marble floors, expensive art that probably cost millions. A stern-looking woman in her 50s approached. "This is Mrs. Kim," Young said without looking at me. "She manages the household. She'll show you to our rooms." Our rooms? At least we'd be sharing space. I have business to handle. His tone made it clear I ranked somewhere below his phone calls in importance. "Mrs. Kim will explain the rules. When will I see you?" The question came out sharper than I intended. He paused, glanced back. "When I have time." Then he was gone, disappearing down a hallway with 2 guards flanking him, leaving me standing there in my wedding gown like an abandoned package. Mrs. Kim gestured for me to follow. We climbed stairs, walked down endless hallways past closed doors and watchful security. The master suite was undeniably beautiful. Massive bedroom, sitting area, bathroom that looked like a spa, closet filled with clothes I hadn't chosen. "Your rooms," Mrs. Kim said in accented English. "You share with Mr. Young. Husband and wife. When does he typically come to bed?" "Late. Very late. Mr. Young works many hours." She looked almost sympathetic. "He is very busy man. Very important. You must be patient." Patient, like I had a choice. "Dinner will be brought at 7. Mr. Young will likely not join you tonight. Wedding night usually different, but Mr. Young has urgent business." Of course he did. I ranked below spreadsheets and phone calls even on our wedding night. Mrs. Kim left, and I stood in the center of my beautiful prison, still in my wedding gown, feeling the full weight of everything crash over me. Hours dragged past. Eventually, I stripped out of the gown and left it pooled on the floor, a small rebellion. The closet held nightgowns in my size. Someone had been thorough. I chose one in champagne silk that was elegant without being provocative, sat on the edge of the bed and waited. Dinner arrived at 7. Exquisite food I couldn't taste. 8 o'clock passed, then 9, then 10. At 11:45, the door finally opened. Young entered with his jacket already removed, tie loosened, looking exhausted. His eyes swept over me briefly. I was sitting on the bed in the nightgown, arms crossed, expression cold. "You're still awake." His tone suggested this was inconvenient. "Mrs. Kim said you'd be back." He moved to the bathroom without responding. Water ran for 20 minutes. When he emerged, he wore only sleep pants, his torso bare and covered in scars and tattoos. Evidence of a violent life. I tensed as he approached the bed. Legally, I was his wife, but that didn't mean I'd just lie there and take whatever he wanted. He pulled back the covers on his side and got in, keeping deliberate distance between us. Then he turned off his lamp. I waited, heart pounding, muscles coiled. But he simply settled onto his back and closed his eyes. "That's it?" Surprise leaked into my voice. "What were you expecting?" I stopped myself. "If you're worried about consummation, don't be. I'm not interested tonight." Relief flooded through me, though I'd die before admitting it. "Fine by me." "Good. Then we understand each other." His voice was already drowsy. "Now sleep." He rolled onto his side, away from me. Within minutes, his breathing evened out. I lay there in the darkness, processing. I should feel relieved. I did feel relieved. I wasn't ready to be touched by this cold stranger who'd looked at me like I was a burden during our entire wedding. But beneath the relief was something else. Something uncomfortable. Rejection. He hadn't even considered it. Hadn't looked at me with any interest whatsoever. I was objectively beautiful. I knew that without vanity. Men had always noticed me, wanted me. But my own husband couldn't even be bothered to fake attraction. It didn't matter, I told myself. I didn't want him anyway. This marriage was a prison, and the less he touched me, the better. But as I lay there listening to him sleep peacefully while I remained wide awake, I couldn't shake the bitter feeling that I'd been sold for £18.5 million to a man who didn't even think I was worth his time. The next morning, I woke to an empty bed. Yong's side was cold. He'd left hours ago without a word. I sat up, looking around the opulent cage, and felt reality settle over me like a shroud. This was my life now. Married to a stranger who couldn't care less that I existed. I showered, dressed in one of the outfits from the closet, a simple navy dress that was elegant and professional, and explored the suite. Everything was provided. Books, laptop, streaming services, a gilded cage with all the amenities except freedom. Mrs. Kim brought breakfast at 9, her expression neutral. "Where is my husband?" "Mr. Yong has meetings all day. He left at 5 this morning." "Does he always leave that early?" "Yes. Mr. Yong is very dedicated to his work." She set down the tray. "You should eat. Keep your strength." She left before I could ask anything else. I picked at the food and spent the morning wandering the suite like a restless animal. By afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I left and began exploring the estate, noting guard positions, security cameras, mapping my prison. Most doors were locked or led to areas clearly off limits. But I memorized everything anyway. Found a library, a gym, a garden courtyard. All beautiful, all empty, all feeling like they belonged to someone else. That evening, Yong returned after 10. I was reading when he entered, barely glancing at me before heading to the bathroom. Water ran. He emerged in sleep pants, got into bed, turned off the light. No words, no acknowledgement. "Did you have a good day?" Sarcasm edged my tone. "Fine. That's it. Just fine." "What do you want me to say, Elna? That I missed you? We barely know each other. We're married. Legally. That doesn't require conversation." He shifted, clearly ending the discussion. "Go to sleep." I bit back the angry retort and rolled onto my side. This was my life. Ignored, dismissed, treated like an inconvenient obligation. The pattern continued for 3 days. Yong left before dawn, returned after dark, barely spoke. We existed in the same space like strangers, and with each passing day, I felt myself growing more restless, more angry, more desperate for something to break the monotony. On the 4th day, I decided to push back. I dressed in one of the more fitted dresses from the closet, deep red, hugging my curves in a way that was elegant but undeniably eye-catching. Left my hair down in loose waves, applied subtle makeup that enhanced my features. Not for him, for myself. To remind myself I existed as more than a ghost. I was walking through the main hallway when I encountered several of Yong's men. They stopped mid-conversation, eyes tracking my movement. One of them, younger with kind eyes, smiled politely. Mrs. Young, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I returned his smile. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Jae-sung. I'm one of Mr. Young's security team. It's nice to meet you, Jae-sung. Your English is excellent. Thank you. I studied in London. He seemed genuinely pleased by the compliment. Are you settling in well? As well as can be expected. I glanced around. It's a beautiful home. Very quiet. Mr. Young values privacy and security. I'm beginning to notice that. I tilted my head. Do you know where I might find him? I had a question about. Jae-sung. Young's voice cut through the hallway like a blade. My office. Now. I turned to see my husband standing at the corridor's end, his expression thunderous. His eyes swept over me, taking in the red dress and loose hair, and something dark flashed before his face became a mask again. Jae-sung bowed quickly. Yes, boss. Excuse me, Mrs. Young. He walked away, leaving me alone with Young's stare. I lifted my chin, refusing to be intimidated. Was there something you needed? My men have work to do. They're not here for you to chat with. I was simply being polite. Or is that not allowed? His jaw clenched. You should return to your room. Our room? And no, I don't think I will. I've been locked away for 4 days like a prisoner. I'm going to explore my new home. I walked past him, shoulder nearly brushing his, and felt the tension radiating from his body. But he didn't stop me, didn't follow. Just let me go with that cold stare burning into my back. Small victory, but a victory nonetheless. That night, Young came to bed even later than usual. I pretended to be asleep, but heard him moving around, felt him pause beside the bed as if considering something, then finally settle on his side. The next day, I wore another striking outfit. White blouse tucked into fitted black pants that made my legs look endless. I made sure to be visible, walking through common areas during times when his men would be around. Not flirting, just existing, being seen. The staff started warming to me. Mrs. Kim taught me Korean phrases. Guards nodded politely when I passed. I was establishing myself as a presence in this household, whether Young liked it or not. On the 6th day, everything changed. I was wandering the estate, restless and unable to sit still. Turned down a corridor I hadn't fully explored. Heard voices ahead, male voices speaking Korean, then laughter. I shouldn't have continued. Should have turned back. But curiosity drove me forward. Then I heard it. A sound that made me freeze. A soft, feminine sound. Breathy and intimate. My heart stopped. No, it couldn't be. I found myself standing before a partially open door, my hand frozen halfway to pushing it wider. Every instinct screamed to walk away, to preserve whatever dignity I had left. But I looked. The room was an office. Dark wood, leather furniture, and in a high-backed chair sat my husband. A woman knelt before him, her dark hair cascading down, her hands on his thighs in a way that made my stomach turn violently. Young's hand was buried in her hair, his head tilted back, eyes half closed in satisfaction. He looked more alive in this moment than he ever had with me. More present, more human. Then his eyes opened fully and locked directly onto me standing in the doorway. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Shock and something that felt horribly like betrayal slammed into my chest. He saw me. He knew I was watching. And he didn't stop. Instead, his lips curved into the smallest, cruelest smirk I'd ever seen. His hand tightened in the woman's hair, guiding her, and his eyes never left my face. The message was crystal clear. You mean nothing to me. I don't want you. This is what I actually desire. The woman made an obscene sound, completely oblivious. Yong's jaw clenched, his breathing deepening, and I realized with horror what was about to happen. Something inside me shattered. Not my heart. I didn't love him, didn't even like him. But my pride, my dignity, my sense of self-worth. I'd been sold to this man for £18.5 million, and he couldn't even be bothered to touch me. But this random woman got his passion, his desire, his attention. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I smiled, cold, knowing, promising retribution, and very deliberately closed the door with a soft click. I walked away with measured steps, heels clicking against marble, spine perfectly straight. Behind me, I heard a muffled masculine sound that indicated Yong had finished. Good. Let him have his meaningless pleasure. Because I'd just discovered something important about myself. I might be trapped. I might have been sold, but I wasn't powerless. I was beautiful. I was educated. I was charming when I wanted to be. And now I had motivation. I returned to the suite, mind racing, a plan beginning to form. If Young thought he could humiliate me and get away with it, he was gravely mistaken. I might not have wanted this marriage, might not have wanted him, but I'd be damned if I let him treat me like I was invisible while finding satisfaction with other women. I would make him see me, make him want me, make him desperate for something only I could give. And then, when he finally came to me with desire in his eyes, I would be the one to reject him. I would make him feel exactly what I'd felt standing in that doorway. That evening, Young came to bed at his usual late hour. I was already there, sitting up reading, wearing a simple nightgown. When he entered, I looked up briefly, expression completely neutral. "Good evening." He paused, clearly expecting tears or accusations or anger. "Good evening," he replied carefully. I returned to my book as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't caught him with another woman just hours ago. He moved to the bathroom. Water ran. When he emerged and got into bed, I could feel his eyes on me. "Elna?" "Yes." I didn't look up. "Are you all right?" "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" A long pause. "No reason." I finally set down my book and turned off my light. "Good night, Young." "Good night." I settled into bed, facing away from him, and smiled in the darkness. Let him wonder. Let him question. Let him realize I wasn't going to play the wounded wife begging for his attention. I was going to play a much more dangerous game, and he was going to lose. The next morning, I woke with purpose burning in my veins. Half the night had been spent planning, strategizing, thinking through every angle. If I was going to make Young regret dismissing me, I needed to become impossible to ignore. I started with appearance. Not subtle changes, dramatic ones. I selected a dress I'd previously overlooked as too bold. Emerald green silk that hugged every curve, with a neckline that dipped just low enough to be provocative without crossing into inappropriate. Styled my hair in loose tousled waves that looked effortlessly stunning. Makeup was flawless, smoky eyes, full lips, a look that said I knew exactly how beautiful I was and didn't care who noticed. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Gone was the guarded, modest woman from the past week. In her place stood someone who looked dangerous, confident, untouchable, perfect. I left the suite mid-morning, knowing Young's men would be around. Sure enough, I encountered a group in the main corridor. For men in expensive suits, clearly discussing business. Conversation died the moment I appeared. I walked past with a serene smile, heels clicking deliberately, movements graceful and unhurried. Felt every eye track me, heard the sudden silence, and kept walking like I hadn't noticed. Behind me whispered Korean. Rapid, hushed. I'd learned enough to catch a few words. Beautiful. Mrs. Young. Dangerous. I smiled to myself. Good. Let them notice. Let word spread that Mrs. Young was not the meek, invisible bride they'd assumed. I found the library and settled in with a book, positioning myself in a chair near the window where afternoon light made me practically glow. I wasn't hiding anymore. Staff members found excuses to pass by. Guards changed patrol routes. Even Mrs. Kim stopped in the doorway, expression unreadable. "Mrs. Young, you look very beautiful today." "Thank you, Mrs. Kim." I smiled warmly. I decided it was time to stop hiding in my room. The older woman nodded slowly. "Mr. Young will be home for dinner tonight. He is hosting business associates. He requested your presence." My pulse quickened. Perfect. My first real opportunity. "Of course. What time?" 7 o'clock. Dress formally. After she left, I returned to the suite and prepared for the evening like I was preparing for war. I chose a black dress that was sophisticated yet undeniably gorgeous. Off-shoulder fitted bodice, a skirt that hugged my hips before flowing elegantly to my knees. Heels that made my legs look endless. Hair swept up in an elegant updo showcasing my neck and shoulders. Diamond earrings, a wedding gift I'd found in the suite, glittered at my ears. Makeup was perfect. Perfume subtle but intoxicating. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who belonged in this world of power and danger. A woman who could hold her own. At precisely 7, I descended the grand staircase. Young was waiting in the foyer with 3 men, 2 Korean, 1 who looked European. All conversation stopped when I appeared. I watched Young's eyes travel over me slowly. Something dark flickered before his expression became unreadable again. But I'd seen it. That flash of awareness, of interest. Gentlemen. I descended the final steps smoothly. I hope I'm not late. Not at all. The European man's eyes were appreciative. You must be Mrs. Young. Your husband didn't mention how stunning you are, didn't he? I smiled, taking Young's offered arm. Felt his muscles tense beneath my fingers. How remiss of him. We moved to the dining room. I found myself seated across from the European. Victor, I learned, with Young at the head of the table. The other two men were Park and Choi, high-ranking members of the Korean syndicate. Throughout dinner, I was charming and engaging. Spoke when spoken to, laughed at appropriate moments, asked intelligent questions about their businesses. But most importantly, I made sure to focus my attention on Victor. When he complimented the wine, I smiled warmly. When he asked about my background, I leaned forward slightly, giving him my full attention. When he told a story, I laughed, genuine, musical, making everyone at the table pause. I felt Yong's eyes on me constantly, but I didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge him beyond what politeness required. Your Korean is improving, Mrs. Young, Park said in English, surprising me. Thank you. Mrs. Kim has been teaching me. I believe in respecting the culture of my new home. A wise approach, Choi added, nodding approvingly. Victor leaned back, eyes warm. And what did you study at university? Your husband mentioned you attended Stellenbosch. International relations and languages. I speak French, German, Portuguese, and Zulu fluently, and I'm working on Korean. German? Victor's face lit up. Then perhaps we should converse in my native tongue. It's rare to find someone in Seoul who speaks it. Before Young could respond, I smiled and switched to flawless German. I'd be delighted. It's a beautiful language. Victor responded enthusiastically, and for several minutes we conversed about European politics, art, culture. I was animated, engaged, laughing at his jokes and sharing observations. I could feel the temperature dropping with each passing moment. When I finally glanced at Young, his expression was carved from ice. His jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle ticking, and his hand gripped his wine glass with enough force that I wondered if it might shatter. But his voice, when he spoke, was perfectly controlled. Perhaps we should return to English so everyone can participate. Of course. I switched languages without missing a beat. Forgive me. I got carried away. Understandable, Victor said, eyes still on me. It's refreshing to speak my language with someone so well-versed. The rest of dinner continued with me carefully balancing attention between all the guests, but making sure Victor received just slightly more of my smiles, my laughter, my focus. When dessert was served, Victor refilled my wine glass without being asked. I thanked him with a warm smile. Under the table, I felt Yong's hand suddenly grip my thigh. Hard, possessive, a clear warning. I didn't flinch, didn't react, just took a sip of wine and continued my conversation with Park about Korean business culture. Yong's fingers tightened. Good. Let him suffer. When dinner finally ended and guests departed, I moved to return to the bedroom. Yong's voice stopped me. A word. My study. His tone was dangerous, controlled fury wrapped in ice. I turned, met his dark eyes, smiled politely. Of course. I followed him down the hallway to his study. He closed the door behind us with careful precision. What the hell was that? His voice was deadly quiet, more terrifying than if he'd shouted. Dinner with your business associates? I thought I did rather well. You were flirting with Victor. I was being charming and engaging. There's a difference. I tilted my head. Isn't that what you wanted? A wife who could impress your associates? Not by making eyes at a European criminal. I didn't make eyes. I had an intelligent conversation in his native language. If he found that attractive, that's hardly my fault. His eyes flashed dangerously. You're my wife. Yes, I am. Legally bound to you through a transaction that saved my father from execution. I stepped closer, anger breaking through. But let's not pretend this is a real marriage. You've made that abundantly clear. What's that supposed to mean? It means you don't get to suddenly play the possessive husband when you've spent the past week treating me like furniture. My voice was sharp, cutting. You want me to sit quietly in our room and be invisible? Fine, but you don't get to have it both ways. I never said I wanted you invisible. You didn't have to say it. Your actions spoke clearly enough. I moved toward the door. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm tired. We're not done talking. Yes, we are. I opened the door, then paused and looked back at him. Oh, and Young, next time you want to entertain guests, give me more notice. I'd hate to underdress for the occasion. I left before he could respond, my heart pounding, adrenaline singing through my veins. I'd pushed back, stood my ground, and judging by the murderous expression on his face, it had worked. That night, when he came to bed hours later, the tension between us was palpable. He got in silently, but I could feel his awareness of me, his anger still simmering. "Elna," he said into the darkness. "Yes. Stay away from Victor." "Is that an order?" "It's a warning." Duly noted. I rolled onto my side, facing away from him. "Good night, Young." Silence. Then, "You're playing a dangerous game." "So are you." I closed my eyes and smiled in the darkness. Round one was mine, and this was just the beginning. Over the next week, I continued my strategy with calculated precision. I dressed impeccably every day, moved through the estate with confidence, engaged with staff and guards alike. I was becoming a fixture in the household, impossible to ignore, and I made sure Young saw every moment of it. When Jae-sung crossed my path in the hallway, I stopped to chat, asking about his day, laughing at his jokes, speaking bits of Korean I'd learned. I could see Young watching from his study doorway, his expression dark. When I used the gym, I wore fitted workout clothes that showcased my figure. Knowing the glass walls made me visible from the corridor he frequently used. When I lounged in the garden reading, I chose spots where I knew he could see me from his office window, the sun catching my hair, my dress riding up slightly as I shifted positions. I wasn't subtle anymore. I was deliberate, and Young noticed everything. I felt his eyes on me constantly, dark, assessing, hungry in a way he was trying desperately to hide. But I saw it. The way his jaw clenched when other men looked at me. The way his hands fisted when I laughed at something Jae-sung said. The way his eyes tracked my movements whenever I entered a room. He wanted me. He was starting to want me. But he was a man used to absolute control, and he wasn't ready to admit it yet. Good. Let him suffer. Let him fight it. The longer he resisted, the sweeter his eventual surrender would be. I was patient. I was strategic. And I was winning. 2 weeks after the dinner with Victor, Young informed me we'd be attending a gala, a major event in Seoul's underworld. All the significant families would be there, along with legitimate businessmen who turned a blind eye to the source of their partner's wealth. "It's black tie," he said over breakfast, a rare moment when our schedules aligned. "The car leaves at 8. I'll be ready." I took a delicate sip of tea, not looking up from the newspaper I was reading. I'd started reading Korean news to improve my language skills, and the fact that I could now understand basic articles clearly irritated him. "Elna." His voice held a warning edge. "This is important. These people are dangerous. You will stay by my side the entire evening." Now I looked up, one eyebrow raised. "Will I?" That's quite different from the past few weeks where you've barely acknowledged my existence. His jaw clenched. "This is business. You represent the Young family now. Your behavior reflects on me. Then perhaps you should have thought of that before leaving me to fend for myself in a house full of strangers who speak a language I'm still learning." I set down my teacup with deliberate care. "But don't worry. I know how to conduct myself in public. I was raised for this, remember?" The reminder of how I'd been sold, trained like a show horse for exactly these moments, hung between us. Young's expression darkened, but he said nothing, just stood and left the room, his shoulders tight with tension. I smiled to myself. Good. Let him stew. That evening, I prepared for the gala like I was preparing for war. I chose a gown that was absolutely stunning, deep sapphire blue, fitted to my body like a second skin before flowing into an elegant train. The neckline was a sweetheart cut that showcased my collarbone and curves without being vulgar. The back was bare, exposing smooth skin down to the base of my spine. My hair was styled in an intricate updo with a few loose tendrils framing my face. Makeup was dramatic, dark eyes, lips that matched the dress perfectly. I wore the diamond necklace and earrings that had been delivered to our suite earlier that day with a note. "Wear these." "Why?" When I descended the staircase, Young was waiting in the foyer, devastatingly handsome in a tailored black tuxedo. His eyes locked onto me immediately, and I watched them travel slowly from my face down my body and back up again. For just a moment, his control slipped. I saw naked hunger flash across his features before he locked it down again, his expression becoming unreadable. "You look acceptable," he said coldly. Acceptable. The same word he'd used on our wedding night. But his eyes told a different story. "Thank you," I replied with poisonous sweetness. You look acceptable as well. Something dangerous flickered in his gaze, but he simply offered his arm. Shall we? The gala was held at one of Seoul's most prestigious hotels, a massive ballroom that sparkled with crystal chandeliers and was filled with Korea's criminal elite dressed in designer formal wear. Everyone looked elegant, refined, civilized. But I could feel the undercurrent of violence, the barely concealed danger that permeated the room. These were people who killed for business, who traded in weapons, drugs, human lives. And they smiled and clinked champagne glasses like they were attending a charity function. The moment we entered, heads turned. I felt dozens of eyes assess me, calculate my value, wonder about the South African bride who'd married the cold and ruthless Young. Young's hand settled on the small of my bare back, his palm warm against my skin. Possessive, claiming, making sure everyone in the room knew exactly who I belonged to. We made our rounds, Young introducing me to various associates, family heads, business partners. I was gracious and charming, speaking Korean where I could, switching to English when needed. I was the perfect Mafia wife. Beautiful, poised, intelligent enough to follow conversations, but not so much that I threatened male egos. I played my role flawlessly while cataloging everything. Names, faces, alliances, tensions. Information was currency in this world, and I was collecting it like treasure. Mrs. Young. A smooth voice interrupted my observation. I turned to find a man in his early 30s, classically handsome with sharp features and calculating eyes. I'm Minjun. I don't believe we've been introduced. No, we haven't. I offered my hand, which he brought to his lips in a gesture that was just slightly too familiar. Your reputation precedes you. They say Young married a South African beauty. They didn't mention you were a goddess. I laughed, the sound light and flirtatious. You're very kind. Are you a business associate of my husband's? We run in the same circles. Competing interests, you might say. His smile was charming and completely predatory. But I believe in maintaining friendly relations with competitors, especially when they have such exquisite taste in wives. Is that so? I tilted my head, very aware that Young was across the room speaking with an older Korean man, but had definitely noticed Minjun's approach. I could feel the weight of his stare. And what business are you in, Mr. Minjun? Import and export, much like your husband. The way he said it made clear exactly what was being imported and exported. Perhaps we should discuss it over a dance. Before I could respond, Yang's voice cut through the air. My wife doesn't dance with other men. He appeared beside me, his hand sliding around my waist with unmistakable possessiveness. Minjun's smile didn't waver, but something sharp entered his eyes. Of course. Forgive me for overstepping. He bowed slightly to me. It was a pleasure meeting you, Mrs. Young. I'm sure we'll see each other again. He melted back into the crowd, and Yang's hand tightened on my waist almost painfully. What did I tell you about staying by my side? His voice was low, dangerous. I was standing right here. He approached me. What was I supposed to do? Be rude to your business associate? He's not an associate. He's a rival. And he was touching you. He kissed my hand. It's a standard greeting. Not the way he did it. Yang's eyes were dark with barely contained fury. You're enjoying this. Enjoying what? Being sociable at a business function? Isn't that what you brought me here for? His jaw clenched. You know exactly what I'm talking about. No, I really don't. I met his gaze innocently. Perhaps you should be more specific. Before he could respond, another couple approached. An older Korean man with a much younger woman on his arm. Introductions were made. Small talk exchanged. The woman, barely 23, looked at me with a mixture of envy and warning in her eyes. As the evening progressed, I made sure to be engaging and charming with every man we encountered. Not overtly flirtatious, I wasn't stupid, but warm, attentive, laughing at jokes, asking thoughtful questions. And with each interaction, I felt Yang's tension ratchet higher. His hand never left my body. Waist, back, arm, always touching, always claiming. His responses to other men became shorter, sharper. His control was fraying at the edges. Good. When Victor appeared, apparently in Seoul for business, his face lit up at seeing me. Mrs. Young, what a pleasant surprise. You look absolutely stunning. Victor, how wonderful to see you again. I smiled warmly, genuinely pleased to see a familiar face. I didn't know you'd be here. Last-minute business, but I'm very glad I came now. He took my hand, kissing it with European flair. That dress is magnificent. You're easily the most beautiful woman in the room. You're too kind. Beside me, Young was practically vibrating with barely suppressed violence. Victor, I wasn't aware you were in Seoul. Young's voice was flat. Just arrived this morning. I'll be here for a few days handling some shipping concerns. Victor's eyes never left me. Perhaps we could all have dinner while I'm here? I'd love to continue our conversation from last time. We're very busy, Young said flatly. Such a shame. Victor smiled at me. But perhaps another time? Would you honor me with a dance, Mrs. Young? I felt Young's entire body go rigid beside me. This was a test. If I said yes, I'd be directly defying Young in public. If I said no, I'd be showing submission. I smiled regretfully. I'm afraid my husband doesn't share. But thank you for the invitation. Victor bowed gracefully. Of course. Understandable. Enjoy your evening. As he walked away, Young's hand on my waist loosened slightly. I'd chosen correctly. Shown independence while ultimately respecting his authority in public. It was a delicate balance, and I'd navigated it perfectly. But I wasn't done yet. The rest of the evening continued in the same vein. Men approached, drawn to me like moths to a flame. I was gracious with all of them, just engaging enough to make Young's blood boil without crossing lines that would embarrass him publicly. By the time we returned home after midnight, Young's control was hanging by a thread. He was silent during the drive, his jaw tight, his hands clenched into fists. We entered our suite, and the moment the door closed, he turned on me. What game are you playing? His voice was deadly quiet, more terrifying than if he'd shouted. I don't know what you mean. I thought I represented the Young family quite well tonight. You were flirting with every man in that room. I was being charming and social. There's a difference. I moved to my vanity, beginning to remove my jewelry. You said my behavior reflects on you. I made sure you looked good. He moved behind me, and I could see him in the mirror. Tall, dangerous, barely controlled. You made every man in that room want to take you. Did I? I met his eyes in the reflection, my voice cool. And why should that bother you? You've made it very clear you don't want me yourself. I never said that. You didn't have to. Your actions spoke clearly enough. I stood, turning to face him. You've ignored me for weeks, dismissed me, humiliated me. So forgive me if I don't understand why you suddenly care who looks at me. Those men are dangerous. So are you. That hasn't seemed to matter. I moved past him toward the closet. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to change. His hand shot out, gripping my wrist and spinning me around to face him. We stood inches apart, the air between us crackling with tension. You think you're so clever, he said softly, dangerously. Playing these games, trying to make me jealous. Is it working? I tilted my head, challenging him. His eyes dropped to my lips, and I saw the war raging behind his dark gaze. Control versus desire. Dominance versus need. Then he released me abruptly and stepped back. Don't push me, Elna. You won't like what happens. Won't I? I smiled coldly. Good night, Young. I walked into the closet, leaving him standing there, and took my time changing. When I emerged in a nightgown, he was already in bed, lying on his back and staring at the ceiling. I got in on my side, turned off my light, and settled into silence. But I could feel his awareness of me. Sharp and intense. Could hear the slight irregularity in his breathing. Could sense the control he was exerting not to reach for me. I smiled in the darkness. He was crumbling. Slowly, steadily, his iron control was cracking. And when it finally shattered completely, I would be ready. To be continued in part 2. If you made it this far, drop a like and subscribe. Comment below. Do you think Elna's plan will work, or is she playing with fire? What do you think happens when Young finally breaks? Part 2 is coming soon, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.